This is Tony Rotundo. Wrestlers are Warriors, correct?
Yeah, wrestlersarewarriors.com is my website and kind of my catch-all for my brand, as it were. Yeah. This
And you
something
started that.
very much. What's that?
How long ago did you start it?
I started photographing in 2006. I started the website about 4 years later, so around 2010 or so. But I was collaborating with John Sachs at TechFall for a long time. And so I kind of created my website and then sort of ported all my stuff over and started publishing all of my stuff on my website around 2010.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
Before we get to the photography, I know you wrestled in New York.
I did. Yeah, outside of Buffalo, New York. My father was a coach. So I grew up like from day one, day negative 9 months, like whatever, around a wrestling mat and around wrestlers and around the whole process. He was very committed to it. And he didn't really wrestle a lot until college. And then he kind of got the bug, and then he started coaching at his high school that he was teaching at. And then he never coached college, but he coached a lot of high school kids. And, as his son, I was not really given a choice. So I had a love-hate relationship with it. I didn't always love it. And it was in the era in the 70s and 80s when we were cutting a lot of weight. So I was cutting weight at a pretty young age, and that really took a toll on me mentally. But I will say one anecdote. I also played soccer. I was terrible at soccer, but my dad got me into a travel team somehow. And we were playing indoor soccer, and I was just not very good. And it was like June, and there were wrestling mats in this gym we were playing at, and the ball went up onto the wrestling mats, and I climbed up to get it. And I had this epiphany that was like, if we roll these out, then I could shine. I could demolish you all. Right.
Right.
But I threw the ball back and was like, okay, I'm going to go, be bad at soccer.
Yeah.
But that was like one time, it stuck with me. I remember that moment because I was like, this is where I feel comfortable. This is where I feel at home, But yeah, I wrestled from a very early age up through college at the University of Buffalo. I peaked when I was about 14. After that, I think I was rebelling against my dad and wasn't really, at a time where, a lot of kids start to really excel if they're going to go into a real college wrestling program. Around that time, I started to rebel against my dad, I think, and didn't really I wasn't mentally 100% into it. I was just getting through it. But it did get me into college, and I got a good degree, and I enjoyed it in college after kind of my dad wasn't my coach. But yeah, I really, it was it's in me. Right. And so then I moved to Northern California. I moved to Washington, D.C. for a little while, didn't wrestle or participate in wrestling or coach, and then moved to Northern California. Same deal. I was out of the sport for a little while, but then I decided to investigate the Northern California wrestling scene a little bit. I refereed for about a day, and it was horrible. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I cannot. Oh my gosh, the officiating is just the hardest way to give back to the sport. I mean, high school, junior high coaching, high school coaching, very difficult way to give back to the sport. Demands a tremendous amount of time. Officiating is just a whole nother level of love of the sport. Like, to get yelled at. I was officiating like some small junior high or JV event, and the kid's pinned, and a coach is screaming at me this kid wasn't pinned. And I'm like, really? Like, you're going to do that to me? Like, he was flat. I have no, there's no reason why I wouldn't call that a pin. Like, and if you're arguing whether your kid was pinned or not, like, you got other stuff to worry about in the wrestling room, So that lasted, a day. And then I started coaching at Berkeley High School, and that was cool, but it was not really fulfilling. And I was I felt trapped in a way. I felt like I enjoyed the kids I was with, but there were maybe 6 to 10 kids in the room. I wasn't really recruiting heavily. I wasn't on the Berkeley campus. I worked nearby. The
Right.
administration wasn't fully in it. It was, the roof would leak. We had, garbage cans catching rainwater, like when it rained. So just, again, I just was like, nah, this isn't really fulfilling me as a way to give back to the sport long term. So then I ran into John Sachs, and he was photographing wrestling. He was photographing his son's team and his son, and we ran into each other in the stands. And I just said, what are you doing? He was just, and he's like, well, I have a website. And so this is around 2002 or 2003, maybe a little later, maybe 2004. So websites, I was in tech, so I understood what websites were, and I understood how they worked to a degree. And this fireworks went off. Like, as soon as he said that, he was like, I take photographs and I put them on the internet. I was like
Yeah.
that is it. Like, I never looked back. I coached high school that next year. I had planned to retire from coaching, at the end of that season, but some things came up and they needed me to coach one more year. And my heart really wasn't in it, which is unfortunate. But I got through the year, and at the end of the year, I picked up a camera and started shooting for John and with John. And yeah, I never looked back. I never questioned it. It was something that I absolutely wanted to do 100%. And it's always been a hobby. It's never been my primary job. There isn't money in wrestling photography, which sorry to say to your fans, there isn't enough to live on. You need other sources of income. And so I had always stayed in tech. And so by having a day job, it afforded me to go and travel and do all the things and buy photography gear. So my story is maybe a little different than some of your listeners and readers, in that I was looking for a way to give back to the sport, and something that I could fully commit to, something that wouldn't be just a 4-year cycle with like a son or a daughter coming through a program and photographing that one person or maybe a team. I knew right away that I wanted to go shoot California high school states. I wanted to go shoot college. I wanted to go shoot, the U.S. freestyle team. Within a year, I knew I wanted to go shoot the world championships. The Olympics weren't really in my sights initially, but then that became a goal. So these were all goals to accomplish, to get good enough, have good enough gear, have money to travel, make the contacts, to get the credentials. So I never, ever looked back or never questioned it. In every relationship I've been in since I started, I've been upfront, like, this is what I do. Like, I have a day job. I have, a lot of room for a relationship, but I do this thing and I'm very good at it. So they say. And
I think you're pretty good.
And I'm completely committed to it, and it's just part of my life. And so having supporting partners is helpful.
So when you first started, did you take pictures and go, oh, that's just not really all that good?
Yeah, I did. And so getting to, kind of the 101 part of that, I had the advantage that I understood the sport. And people talk about this every interview I've ever done. They start with like, well, the sport, so you know what's happening next. And it's true. I mean, there is, knowing the sport is very, very helpful. And then for me, even a step further, knowing the moves that people do, the tendencies people have. I know that Sarah Hildebrand is going to hit that slide by at some point in the match. I know it's coming. And it's only a matter of whether she's facing me or not facing me, but I know it's coming. I was just shooting in Ottawa at the Pan American Games, and this Cuban, Salas Perez, who wrestles at 97 kilos, he does this foot sweep that when he finishes it, he jumps in the air to it. every match I'm on him, and I know it's going to happen. And in fact, of all the matches between the 2 weekends, he never really fully hit it. But I was telling this one guy, I was like, look, you got to watch this guy because he's going to go and he's going to hit it. And he attempted it 4 times, but he never got the guy off the ground. So that like thing that's going in your head, like understanding the sport and really geeking out, like this match is important because these two met. You know, it's like these two were number one in high school and they're now meeting in the wrestlebacks in college. Right. So Jason Welch and Scotty Winston, first time they hit in college, they were like number one, number two in high school. They're in the wrestlebacks on Friday evening. There are no other photographers there. I'm like, this match is cool. This match is important for the media because, you know, they were like ranked number one and number two, never hit in high school. Now they're freshmen. They're both true freshmen. You know, this is the match that people wanted last year. So, you know, having that knowledge of the sport and passion for the sport is helpful.
Yeah.
But,
what about,
clearly, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
Well, what I'm going to say is that clearly if they're reading your articles and watching your videos, they're interested in the sport at the very least, right? So,
well, I think most of them are probably parents. Those are the people who have reached out to me the most, and they take pictures and they have a passion, and obviously their kid is, you know, wrestling in it. But I think that they're probably looking at it going, it happens so fast, right? And I every time I get a shot, I get the back of this person on my kid's head, or I get this, or I get that. And, you know, I'm not a professional photographer. I take pictures as well. I end up taking 2,000 and most of them are probably not very good. But I find the ones that actually really work and work really well. But like you, I wrestled, so I feel like I know where to be on the mat and what's going to kind of happen next, what maybe should happen next, even if I don't know the kids as well as maybe you know what's going to happen with Sarah Hildebrandt. But what do you tell a parent that's really just trying to capture some really good images?
Yeah. So what I say, and I get asked all the time, same as you, is to set goals. Like, you know, the one nice thing with wrestling is there are moments that are static, meaning they're not moving. So they're going to shake hands. They're not really moving there. You know, that's going to happen. There's going to be a hand raise. You know, that's going to happen. Hopefully it's your son or daughter. There's going to be referee's position set up. So for the way I started was get those good, get those photos good. We say dial in. I use the term a lot. What I mean is take that photo, like before your kid is up, take some photos and learn so there is a learning curve to this, right? So you can't just pick up a camera, take it out of its box and just start shooting. So you need to read the manual of the camera, and the camera will often have a sport function. Well, that may or may not work. So learn how to do manual settings, and learning shutter speed and f-stop isn't really that hard. It just takes a little bit of time. So understanding the fundamentals of photography is super helpful. And then take some photos before your kid is up and see how they look and play with the settings on the camera a little bit to try to get it to look right. And then you know that there's going to be a handshake. Now, pay attention. If you can move around the mat, pay attention. Well, where's the table? The official's going to be on the other side of the wrestlers from the table. Right. So you don't want to be on the side of the official because he's going to block that handshake view. Right. So make sure you come around to the right side or one of the right angles. And when they shake hands, get that shot. Now, you know, it's not like they sit there and they hold hands. So, you know, so like that's, you know, practice. Right. Okay. I know they're going to reach out and they're going to shake hands. That's a practice point where it's like, okay, I'm going to get that right when their hands touch, right? And so right. These are all practice things, right? So then referee's position, that's one really good one. So, you know, there's usually a moment if one guy is getting set in referee's position, the other guy's maybe standing back and kind of has his hands on his knees and stuff like that. That can be like a nice shot with a little bit of drama. Zoom in on your on your kid's face there, whether they're down. Sometimes the referee's position guy will look back. There's a little bit of drama in that. So use
Right.
that as it's kind of controlled, it's not moving real fast, right? The person gets set. Okay. So then, make sure you get that shot, because sometimes it's just a touch set, right? So it's like, there's another practice point. Like, okay, the timing on this, I want to get my timing together. I'm paying attention. Now, granted, sidebar, if it's your child competing, it's hard to stay calm. I mean,
Yeah.
when, during Snyder said July of 1, my heart was like 200 beats a minute, and I'm trying to like breathe and stay focused. I'm like, oh my, I'm like, adrenaline is going, right? So
Right.
I get it. It's hard to stay calm, but okay, referee's position, bring your heart rate down,
All the more reason to practice on other kids, though, and everything else.
Very good point. Right. And you're going to throw those away unless it's, kids from your team. And we'll get to editing in a second, but these are all like specific areas to practice on, right? So then, if your kid's on bottom, maybe they'll do a stand up, maybe they'll do a switch, all of a sudden some action starts, but you kind of know they're going to do a move. They're going to but your kid, right? And like, well, what is he really good at? Well, he's really good at a stand up, and he does it 90% of the time. So get ready,
Right.
Boom, stand up happens. He's coming up. He or she's coming up. They can block out. They can try to get wrist control. All that's going to happen, right? So these are good moments. Okay. So then let's say someone's on their back, hopefully not your child, because you don't want a picture of that. They're on, they're going to get a pin, remain calm, wait till they circle around. They're in a headlock. They're going to sit through on a headlock. Are they facing you? Good moment in time to capture a shot.
Right.
They win the match. You're going to get a hand raise. Fortunately, if the ref is really good, he'll do a good hand raise. I will often tease the officials about whether they did a good or not hand raise. Hopefully they hold the hand there and not just a quick one. In the finals, usually they'll do that. Usually they'll circle them around. Great time to get a shot. It's coming. If he's circling them around, it's coming, wait, and then take 3 shots of it. Bing, 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 as they come around,
Right. So you talked a little bit about that it's not just taking the pictures, but it is that post-production and it takes time.
Yeah.
So what is a pretty general level of kind of post-production for your average person? You put it into your computer, you go through it, and you delete the ones that aren't very good, but what else?
Well, that let's not to glaze over that. Like, that is the hardest thing for some folks. Like if they took 1,000 shots, like I've had people spend days trying to figure out, well, do I want, I really don't want to throw this shot out, even though no faces are in it, but it's crystal clear. And it's like, that is very hard for people to do, but you really want to get them pared down to 10% of what you've taken or less. I average 7 to 10% from a big event. So I'll take 1,000 to 100 and maybe 70. And so,
how long does that take?
Well, the post-processing for me takes a long time, and people don't realize that. And then I caption them all, which is I go and I get the text results and I put that in the caption, so that then when you go to my website, you can search by name.
Yeah, I saw that. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's only as good as I am in terms of like being diligent about captioning. And that's a lot of reason why I'm going back and reprocessing a lot of my old photos, because then I can caption them properly and bring them back onto my site. But that part is important. People don't want to see 1,000 pictures of blurry, bad photos, right? So, and in fact, if you get 10 great photos from a match, you're doing really well, like you're doing really good. And that's about what grandma wants to see. She doesn't necessarily want to go through and see, all these like blurry ones, because she's going to get bored of it. So, editing them down to and distilling them down to just the good ones is important. And then, if you want to go the next step, you can go into post-processing, which is bringing it into a program like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop. There are a number of other ones. There are some that are free that you can do a little bit to. Lightroom, you can do a lot to. Photoshop, you can do a lot to the photo. to change the luminosity, change how dark and light it is,
Hmm.
and make some changes to the color, which is tricky. Like if a wrestling mat is green, that's going to cast green on the skin of the athletes. If it's red, which is horrible, it's going to cast red on. And so
Right.
some of that is salvageable, some of it isn't. It's easy to get frustrated there.
Yeah, I was going to
So
ask you about that because I've noticed in going to gyms all over the Southeast, boy, some, and I haven't figured it out, and you probably just talked about it, different mats and different lighting have this huge impact on the quality of the pictures that I'm even able to take.
yeah, it's enormous. And that's why getting the best gear you can afford will help with that in terms of the lighting and capturing the action. But the matte color is very frustrating, even for me at the highest level. If I have a college event and the mat is red, like at Stanford, I'm struggling. Like my post processing is half the speed. I can't, every photo needs a little bit of manipulation because you're trying to get skin tones natural. Like for me, I don't, if there's a gray wall in the background and a red mat, I don't care what the color is of the wall. I'm not trying to get that to be gray. I'm
Right.
just trying to get natural skin tones. That's the ultimate goal in terms of wanting the picture to look good. Because if their skin is red and, it's just not a good looking photo.
Is there
So there are tricks in post processing to do that.
is there, so, reading the manual, to taking, the camera, playing with it, messing with it, those sorts of things. Have you run across any like YouTube videos or anything along those lines that kind of could help a really beginner parent take a better picture?
I haven't, but I haven't looked
Okay.
really.
I was just
I
curious.
maybe I should make one.
Yeah.
but,
Well, I
but
think yeah, because I mean, they're asking me. I'm like, I don't know. I just mess around.
yeah, and admittedly, I'm a Nikon guy, so I don't know Canon really that well. I think that a YouTube video like that. The thing about a YouTube video like that is it needs to be updated every couple of years because if you start to get into the
Right. The
specifics
equipment.
of the
Yeah.
cameras, they're constantly being updated. But what I will say is, getting something better than an iPhone or a phone and getting
Right.
a DSLR like an actual like camera. And they're like mirrorless cameras are really popular now, and for the average parent, a mirrorless camera is probably fine. They take really crystal clear photos. For professional use, they're not quite there for professional sports. I know John's playing with one and trying to dial into one, a mirrorless camera. I haven't really picked one up. I've read about them a fair amount. And I'm the thing for me is that it's a whole nother lens set. It's a whole nother, it's
Right.
batteries, cards, battery charger, all that. So my gear is already, I've got a pretty heavy bag. And so going mirrorless means a whole nother set of that type of stuff. So, I haven't explored, but I'm real close to exploring with mirrorless at this point.
Very
Um,
cool. Well,
but
I've got just two other things real quick.
yeah,
I don't want to keep you forever, but and these are away from the wrestling kind of 101 type of thing. But if you were to tell me an event that you shot that was really cool from a photographer's perspective, not necessarily the wrestling, but the setup or the venue, whatever. Do you have one that stands out?
well, I mean, there are a lot that stand out. There was, obviously the lighting in the Olympics is pretty amazing. And
Oh,
one of
really?
the cool things is that you can go from venue to venue at the Olympics and almost not have to make any changes to your gear. So they not only make sure that the wrestling venue is lit
Perfect.
beautifully,
Right. Yeah.
but you can then go to another indoor venue. And I did this because shooting like the Pan American Games, they're run by the same people that do the Olympics, and so like I'm able to shoot multiple sports. So I would go in and fencing, it's a little darker,
Hmm.
but table tennis, going into whatever venue, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like I'm making really minor edits, but like the color is all the same. And the lighting is almost always the same. So that's really cool.
So one of the things that you actually just merged or morphed into my second question, which was shooting other things. Because I've been on your Smug Mug account. You shoot like a hip hop dance. You
Yeah.
shoot other things along those lines.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a photographer, so you want to shoot as many different things as possible. But how do those things do they help in kind of anticipating wrestling and doing different things, or?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Like it's
Right.
really cool. You know, the hip hop thing was really interesting. And in fact, I was only shooting the warm up. So like I, you know, having shot the Olympics, it gives you a little bit of street cred. And so I just reached out to them. That it was this hip hop performance that was coming to the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And I was going to go. I had a ticket. My wife and I were going. And I'm like, that'd be really cool. I actually wanted to shoot proper break dancing. That's what I want to shoot. But it was like, okay, you know, they're coming. And so I just sent an email out and I was just like, hey, you know, I'm a photographer. Here's my sports stuff. I think it would transfer over pretty well to dance. Can I come shoot it? And didn't hear from them. And then they got back to them and they said, you know, what they basically did was they let photographers shoot during the dress rehearsal.
Oh,
And
okay.
so for me, it was like, I don't know anything about dance and I don't know anything about like what their performance is going to be like. And the lighting is awkward and hard, but it's all a really fun challenge.
Yeah,
And
and you got some awesome pictures.
yeah. And you know, what's funny. So like, I'm so used to processing some photos quickly to get them out to the media. I had photos to them, like other photographers were leaving. They were going during the performance, I'm like uploading photos to the folks because I was like, if they, you know, I was like, oh, here's some photos if you want to send out
Right.
to media, like, because they were doing it all weekend. This was a Friday. So learning how to process quickly was, you know, was important if you want to get into doing this quasi professionally or for
Right.
USA Wrestling or anything. But yeah, no, it was really, really fun. And then, you know, having the gear that's just sitting there most of the time, you know, waiting for a wrestling event to happen. I'm like, why not? So I get asked to do weddings all the time, but like anything, you know, you can't, you know, I tell my friends, I'm like, I can photograph your wedding, but I won't be able to be at your wedding because, you know, you
Right.
can't do both. You have to focus on it. So yeah, it's fun doing other stuff. I used to do a lot of other sports, but that was when I had more time. Like I would go shoot college or high school football and all kinds of things, but I was shooting like every weekend
All the
for a
time.
year.
Right.
And you know, that just wasn't sustainable and having a relationship. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Really,
Sure.
the whole idea behind it was, and I want to be able to provide something to parents to say, look, you know, this is a process. I mean, Tony is one of the best photographers, wrestling photographers around. You know, it's a process. It takes a significant amount of time to get some really good pictures. And you know, don't, you know, continue to kind of grind through that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes
Um,
time. You're not going to be able to do it just, you know, you pick up a camera and get great photos. It takes practice, getting timing, reading about how to work the camera, buying the gear that you can afford. Buying, you know, used gear is fine. As soon as Canon or Nikon puts out a new camera, everything down the line gets a little cheaper in the used market.
right.
I will say my one in terms of lenses, and we won't go too deep into gear, but trying to find a lens that it's an f2.8. So whether it's the one workhorse lens that both Canon and Nikon, they both have a 70 to 200, so a
Mhm.
little bit wide to a little bit of a zoom. F2.8 is the workhorse for all of us. You can get Tamron versions, so off-market versions. You can get them used. There are a lot of them out there. That is the lens I recommend they get. It's kind of a perfect wrestling lens. You can sit mat side and get almost all the action that comes to you, and you can reach as far as like a good shot in the coach's corner if you're wrestling freestyle, or if there's one of the other things, if there's a timeout, whether it's an injury timeout or whatever, it's a great moment to get like your coach and your athlete together.
Right. Yeah.
Talk. And be patient in those moments, because they might not be facing you, but they invariably end up going in at 360 degrees somehow. They'll turn around, and like you might get a shot where it's your athlete is walking toward you and you've got the coach in the background.
Right.
He's giving some last minute instructions. These are all things to think about. Like, don't put the camera down if the action is stopped. Keep like thinking about. My mantra is follow the athlete, even if the match is over. Are they going to leap into the arms of the coach? Don't, after the hand raise or after the referee calls the pin, what's the athlete going to do? Is it the state finals? Are they going to jump up, run to the corner? That's all stuff. You got to follow that athlete, and so.
Right, because that might be a moment that you're not ever going to get back, and you have captured it.
Yeah. So you got to stay focused.
Follow the athlete.
Easy to say and hard to do. There are all kinds of distractions, and so staying focused and present and in the moment and ready to fire is really key to it. And that f2.8 lens is good for.
Okay, great. And that's a pretty expensive lens, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing. So, you can spend $3,000 on them brand new, but you don't have to. You can find them on the used market. They're prevalent. They're everywhere. Everybody has them. So, go to a trusted source, whether it's a camera store or whether it's something, some online. I wouldn't use eBay. eBay's kind of sketchy. But use like B&H will do refurbished. So, for me, if I buy anything new, and I buy used gear, but I'll immediately send it into Nikon for, to do a clean and repair. And they will not send it back unless it's absolutely up to code or
that's an option.
Yeah, that increases the price of your gear. But if you get it for a quarter of the sale price, and then you spend $250 to get it cleaned and looked at by Canon or Nikon, it's totally worth it. Then you've got, like, not new, but you've got a really good piece of gear that you can trust. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, again, thanks for taking the time. When we see you on the mat again, where will it be?
I think that's everybody's guess, right? Like, everybody's guess.
All right. If you were big plan in the future, where if it materializes, I mean, really, I don't know. I doubt Fargo is going to happen. I've never shot Fargo, so honestly, you've never shot Fargo?
I'd not. The timing, because of where it falls with stuff in my personal life and work. My day job, and then usually the World Championships are in August or September, and I'm like, I can't. In Fargo, the way travel works, you can't. You kind of almost have to go for 5 days. You have to pretty much take a week. It's not worth it to go just for like a weekend. Every year I look into it, and I'm like, well, I'd have to leave Thursday and come back Tuesday or whatever. So I've never been to Fargo, so I don't think Fargo is going to happen, but if it did, I'd probably go to Fargo. But barring that, it won't be till the start of the college season in the fall.
I got you. Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. And then obviously next year is going to be wonky.
Right.
But and we've got the Pan Ams were done. So that was the last thing that was done. So, the continental qualifiers in Europe and Africa and Asia all have to happen next spring, but the Pan American qualifiers won't have to happen. They'll probably do the Pan American Championships, which are yearly. That'll probably be in South America, I think. But then the Pan American qualifiers won't need to be done. So I don't know what world events I'll be doing before the Olympics, but then there'll be the Olympics.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time, and stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks. Likewise.
All right, you take care.
Yeah.